I always thought Stephanie and I were solid. We had our ups and downs like any couple, but at the end of the day, I believed we were a team. I worked hard, and she tolerated my interests. That's how it had always been. She never cared for motorsports, never saw the thrill in it, but she put up with my passion because it was my thing. So when I scored VIP passes to Talladega for a practice day, I thought it was a big deal. I had pulled every string I could, saved up for months to make it happen, and I wanted to share it with her. You know I don't care about cars, Cole, she had sighed when I told her, barely looking up from her phone. They just go in circles. What's the point? It's not just about the cars, I had told her. It's about the experience. The sound, the energy, the fumes and sweaty guys in fireproof suits? She had smirked. Sounds magical. I should have known then. But she agreed to go, so I told myself it meant something. I ignored the irritation under her words, the way she rolled her eyes when I rattled off driver stats on the drive up. I even ignored the fact that when we got there, she seemed far more interested in who was around rather than what was happening on the track. That was always Stephanie. She craved excitement, but only the kind that made her feel important. We had been there for about an hour when I first noticed her drifting. At first, she stayed close, nodding absently as I explained the pit setups, the telemetry screens, the insane precision of every adjustment. But then she started glancing around, eyes darting toward the garages, toward the crews. And then she saw him. Travis, one of the mechanics working for a mid-tier team, covered in grease and confidence, grinning like he knew exactly what kind of effect he had on women who didn't belong in pit row. And Stephanie? She lit up like a damn Christmas tree. Who's that? She asked, her voice suddenly carrying interest. I followed her gaze, already feeling the answer like a pit forming in my stomach. Just a guy on one of the teams, I muttered. She smiled. I think I want to learn more about the cars. I laughed, but it didn't reach my eyes. You? Interested in cars now? She shrugged. Maybe I've just never had the right teacher. And with that, she wandered off, sauntering toward the garage area where he was standing, leaving me standing there like an idiot. I should have stopped her, should have pulled her back. But instead, I just stood there, watching her make me disappear. Stephanie was never good at pretending to be interested in something that didn't benefit her. That's what made it obvious. The moment she locked eyes with Travis, her entire demeanor shifted. Her body language, the way she flipped her hair, even the way she laughed. I had seen her do it before, back when we first started dating. Back when I was the guy she had been interested in. I tried to ignore it. I told myself she was just being friendly, that I was overreacting. I watched her lean in as Travis talked, nodding along like she actually cared about the aerodynamics of a stock car. She placed a hand on her hip, angling her body just slightly toward him, mirroring his posture in that subconscious way people do when they're engaged. But she wasn't just engaged. She was enthralled. A pit was forming in my stomach, but I still held on to the hope that she was just being social, that she wasn't doing what it looked like she was doing. Then, she touched his arm. It was quick, barely noticeable to anyone who wasn't looking. But I was looking. I saw the way her fingers lingered for just a second too long, the way Travis smirked, the way his stance shifted from casual conversation to something more suggestive. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to breathe. I had been humiliated by her before, usually in more subtle ways, little digs at parties, backhanded compliments in front of friends. But this wasn't subtle. I didn't want to make a scene. I didn't want to be that guy, the one who gets jealous over nothing. So I waited, hoping she'd snap out of it, that she'd remember she came with me. Instead, she laughed at something he said, and then, asterisk asterisk without even looking back at me. Asterisk asterisk she followed him toward the garage area. I watched them go, my feet rooted to the ground, my pulse hammering. She didn't even glance in my direction, didn't even think to say, "Hey, I'll be right back," or "Come with me." I wasn't even a thought in her mind. The anger started slow, creeping under my skin, burning hotter with every step she took away from me. But it wasn't just anger. It was realization. This wasn't new. This wasn't out of character. I had spent years excusing this kind of behavior. Maybe not this blatant, but the same pattern. Stephanie finding attention somewhere else, soaking it in, making sure I saw it, then dismissing me like I was overreacting when I called her out. I closed my eyes, inhaling the thick scent of rubber and gasoline, trying to steady myself. But I couldn't just let it go. Not this time. So I followed them. I kept my distance at first, blending into the movement of the crew members and VIP guests. Stephanie and Travis had slipped past a roped-off area, moving toward one of the garages that wasn't in use. I could see Travis glancing around, making sure no one was paying attention. Stephanie, she was just smiling. Something in me snapped. I moved faster, my fists clenched at my sides. If I got there and she had the nerve to tell me I was being paranoid, to act like she was just getting a damn tour, I didn't know what I was going to do. Then I saw it. Just outside the garage door, half hidden by the shadows, her hairband. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. Stephanie never took that thing off. She always had it on her wrist or in her hair. It was second nature for her. And now it was on the floor, right outside a roped-off pit stall. I swallowed hard, every muscle in my body tightening as I stepped closer. The door to the garage wasn't shut all the way, just cracked open enough for me to see inside. And when I looked through that gap, everything fell apart. Stephanie, Travis, together, close, too close. The air was thick with the scent of oil and rubber, the distant roar of engines rumbling outside. But inside that garage, all I could hear was my own pulse, thundering in my ears. For a moment, I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't process the fact that this was real. I had spent years defending her, years convincing myself that the way she treated me was just her personality, that she was blunt but not cruel, that she cared in her own way. But now, standing there, watching her with him, I understood. She had never respected me, and I had spent far too long pretending that was okay. I took a slow step back, my heart pounding so hard I thought I might be sick. I could storm in there, confront them, make a scene. But that's exactly what she'd expect. She'd turn it around on me, make me look like the crazy one, like the insecure husband who couldn't handle his wife talking to another man. No, she had played her game. Now, it was my turn. I turned and walked away, my mind already working. Stephanie thought she was untouchable, that she could humiliate me in private and walk away without consequences. She had no idea what was coming. I don't remember walking back to the main area of the speedway. One moment, I was standing at the edge of that pit garage, staring through the crack in the door, my world tilting off its axis. The next, I was weaving through the crowd, past roaring engines and VIP guests, past crew members prepping cars for practice laps, my feet moving on autopilot. My hands were shaking, not with sadness, not even with rage, with clarity. I had spent years ignoring the signs. The dismissive way Stephanie spoke to me in front of friends, the way she acted like being with me was some kind of chore, the way she thrived on attention from other men but never once looked at me like that. And now, I had undeniable proof of what she really thought of me. I needed air. I pushed past the last row of trailers and stepped into a quieter section of the lot, away from the noise, the people, her. I braced my hands on my knees, taking slow, deep breaths, trying to steady myself. Think, Cole. Don't react. Don't give her what she wants. Confronting her now? Pointless. She'd just deny it. She'd tell me I was crazy, that I misunderstood, that it wasn't what it looked like. She'd twist it, make me the bad guy for spying on her, for not trusting her. And even if she admitted it, what then? She'd apologize, cry a little, promise it was a mistake. I had seen it happen to other guys before. They forgave. They stayed. They regretted it. No, I wasn't going to be that guy. I pulled out my phone, my thumb hovering over the screen. Who could I tell? Who would believe me? And then it hit me, Cameron. Cameron worked trackside media for the event, a guy I'd known for years. He was one of the few people in my life who actually understood my obsession with racing. I shot him a text. Need a favor. Big one. Meet me by the press tent. His response was almost immediate. You got it. By the time I made it over to the tent, Cameron was already there, sipping a water bottle, his expression curious. You look like you've seen a ghost, he said. I exhaled. Not a ghost. Just the truth. He frowned. What's going on? I hesitated, then just said it. Stephanie's cheating on me. His expression darkened. You sure? I nodded. Caught her sneaking into a pit garage with a mechanic. I saw just enough to know exactly what was happening. Cameron swore under his breath, shaking his head. Man, I'm sorry. That's brutal. I let out a humorless laugh. Yeah, but I'm not here for sympathy. I need your help. He studied me, then gave a slow nod. Tell me what you need. That's the thing about motorsports. It's all about timing. And this needed to be timed perfectly. I explained my plan. I knew Cameron had access to track footage, fan highlights, even the big screen that displayed mid-race clips for the crowd. I didn't need direct footage of what Stephanie and Travis were doing. I just needed enough. Enough to make people wonder. Enough to plant the seed of humiliation. Cameron listened, his expression unreadable. When I finished, he let out a low whistle. Damn, that's cold. But I get it. I clenched my fists. She thinks she can embarrass me? Make me look like a fool while she sneaks around behind my back? I want her to feel what that's like. I want her to feel every set of eyes on her, wondering if she's as innocent as she pretends to be. Cameron exhaled, then nodded. All right, I'll see what I can do. And just like that, the wheels were in motion. By the time I made it back to the main event area, Stephanie was still missing. I spotted Travis back near the pit lane, adjusting a tire pressure gauge, looking way too satisfied with himself. I wanted to walk over and wipe that smug grin off his face. But I kept my distance. Patience. Timing. Let them think they got away with it. Then, finally, Stephanie reappeared. Her hair was neatly brushed, but I noticed a smudge of grease on her wrist that she must have missed. She walked toward me casually, like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just tossed our marriage into a fire. Hey, babe, she said, smiling. This place is actually kinda cool. I forced a smile. Yeah? She nodded. I was talking to one of the mechanics. He showed me a few things about the cars. I actually learned a lot. She was lying to my face, looking me in the eye, smiling, pretending. And for the first time in our entire relationship, I wasn't falling for it. I wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her close. She didn't flinch. Why would she? She thought she had one. I'm glad you're having a good time, I said softly, because I have something special planned for you later. She beamed. Really? What is it? I just smiled. You'll see. And that was the moment I knew. Stephanie had no idea her world was about to crash. Stephanie thought she got away with it. That was the part that ate at me the most. She had walked back to me after what she did. After being with him. And smiled like nothing had happened, like she could just wipe away the evidence, smooth her hair, and step right back into her role as my wife. As if I was too blind, too stupid, too weak to notice. But she was wrong. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to confront her in some heated argument that she could twist into me being paranoid or overreacting. No, I had waited too long, swallowed too much, and ignored too many warning signs for that. I was going to make sure that when I exposed her, she felt the weight of it for the rest of her life. I spent the next few hours keeping up the act, playing the perfect, unsuspecting husband. I bought us drinks, made conversation, pointed out cool details about the track, even wrapped my arm around her when the crowd cheered for a practice lap. And the whole time, I watched her. I watched how easily she played along, how effortless the lies came to her. I had already set things in motion with Cameron, but I needed more. I needed proof. When Stephanie stepped away to use the restroom, I did something I never thought I'd do. I reached into her bag, pulled out her phone, and unlocked it. She never changed her passcode. The messages were right there. Travis, still thinking about earlier. Wish we had more time. Stephanie, me too. But he's here. Later? I tightened my grip on the phone, my nails digging into my palm. No shame. No hesitation. Just casual planning, like sneaking around behind my back was as simple as setting up a dinner reservation. I took a screenshot, sent it to myself, and deleted the evidence before locking her phone and slipping it back into her bag. When she came back, smiling like nothing was wrong, I returned the smile. It was the last time I would ever look at her without disgust. Cameron texted me an hour later. It's set. Clip will roll before the pre-race ceremony. Make sure you are near the big screen. I exhaled slowly. This was it. The event was packed by the time the main festivities started. The crowd roared as engines fired up, and the announcers began hyping up the big race weekend. And then, just as planned, the big screen lit up for the fan highlight reel. It started innocent enough. Clips of excited fans, drivers signing autographs, kids waving flags. Then, seamlessly, the footage shifted. A grainy security feed. A woman, familiar even in low resolution, slipping into a pit garage. A man following her. No names, no clear faces, but I didn't need them. The implication was enough. The murmurs started immediately. People pointing, whispering, turning to each other with raised eyebrows. Did you see that? Someone near me muttered. Was that? Another person let out a low whistle. Damn, someone's in trouble. Beside me, Stephanie went rigid. I could feel the way her entire body tensed as she stared at the screen, her breath hitching. What? She started, her voice barely audible. And that's when I made my move. I stepped forward, pulling the microphone from the event host's hand as the clip looped one final time on the massive screen. My voice was calm, steady, but loud enough for thousands to hear. Some flags you just can't ignore. The reaction was immediate. The crowd erupted. Some gasped, some laughed, some just watched in stunned silence, waiting for what would happen next. Stephanie turned to me, her face pale, her mouth opening and closing like she was struggling to find words. Cole, what the hell did you? I didn't let her finish. I dropped the microphone, turned on my heel, and walked away. Behind me, the wreckage of her reputation burned in front of an entire stadium. I didn't turn back. Not when the crowd erupted into a mix of laughter, gasps, and murmurs. Not when Stephanie let out a sharp, stunned breath beside me. Not even when she grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin in desperation. She knew. The moment the screen flashed with that grainy footage, the second my words rang out over the speakers, she knew her perfect little illusion had shattered. Cole, she hissed, her voice low, panicked. What did you do? I pulled my arm away, not bothering to look at her. What you deserved. Around us, people were turning, whispering, trying to connect the dots. Some already had. A group of guys a few feet away were laughing, shaking their heads. A woman nearby muttered, "Damn, that's embarrassing." Stephanie was still frozen, staring at the massive screen as the footage looped one final time. She opened her mouth, closed it, then finally snapped, her voice sharp with fury. "You think this is funny?" I turned to her then, my expression calm, unreadable. "I think it's fitting. You embarrassed me in private. I just returned the favor in public." Her face twisted, her hands clenched into fists. "You don't know what you've done." I let out a humorless laugh. "I know exactly what I've done. The question is, do you know what you've done? Because the way I see it, you didn't just cheat. You made a choice. And you were so damn sure I wouldn't notice, that I wouldn't have the spine to do anything about it." Her eyes darted around, realizing just how many people were watching. She lowered her voice, trying to regain control. "This isn't the place for this. We need to go somewhere private. Talk about this like adults." "Adults?" I scoffed. "That's rich, coming from you." She was losing her grip, the panic slipping through her carefully constructed mask. "We can fix this," she pleaded. Let's go. Please." I studied her for a long moment, then shook my head. "There's nothing to fix, Stephanie. You made sure of that the second you walked into that garage." She flinched. I turned on my heel and started walking away, leaving her standing there, her world crumbling around her. But she wasn't done yet. Behind me, I heard her sharp intake of breath, the shift in her voice from panic to rage. "You think you're some kind of hero?" she shouted after me. "You think you won?" I stopped, slowly turning back. "You just embarrassed me in front of thousands of people." She spat, her eyes wild, her voice shaking with fury. "You humiliated me. Do you really think that makes you the good guy?" I exhaled, tilting my head slightly. "No, Stephanie. I don't think I'm the good guy. But I know I'm not the fool anymore." Her nostrils flared, her hands trembling at her sides. "You'll regret this," she warned, her voice barely above a whisper. I smiled. "No, I won't." And with that, I walked away, leaving her standing in the wreckage of her own making. As I moved through the crowd, I caught glimpses of reactions. Some people stared, others whispered, a few even clapped. Cameron was standing near the press booth, arms crossed, watching it all unfold. When I reached him, he let out a low whistle. "Well," he said, shaking his head, "that was one hell of a spectacle." I ran a hand through my hair, letting out a slow breath. "Yeah, it was." He studied me. "How do you feel?" I thought about it for a second. "Lighter." He smirked. "Good. Because she looks like she's about to explode back there. I didn't turn around. Not my problem anymore. Cameron chuckled. Damn right. And with that, I walked away from Talladega, from her, and from the years of disrespect I had let slide for far too long. Some flags you just can't ignore. And I was finally done pretending I didn't see them. I didn't go straight home after leaving Talladega. I needed time to let everything sink in, to process the fact that I had just detonated my marriage in front of thousands of people. I wasn't sure what I expected to feel: relief, victory, maybe even regret. But as I drove aimlessly down the highway, all I felt was freedom. Like I had finally taken off a weighted vest I hadn't realized I was wearing. Stephanie had spent years undermining me. Sometimes in small ways, little jabs at dinner parties, dismissing my opinions like they were background noise. Other times, it was more deliberate, acting like she was doing me a favor by staying in our marriage, like I was lucky she put up with me. And the whole time, I convinced myself it was just her personality, that I was overthinking it, that love was supposed to feel like this. But it wasn't. I pulled into a gas station, parked the car, and leaned back in my seat. My phone buzzed on the dashboard. Stephanie. Again. The last 30 minutes had been nothing but missed calls and texts, a desperate stream of rage and pleading. Answer me. You have no idea what you've done. We need to talk. Now. I swear to God, Cole, pick up. I stared at the screen, debating whether I even wanted to hear her voice. What was left to say? I had already seen the truth, not just in that garage, but in every moment that led up to it. This wasn't about one betrayal. It was about who she was, who she had always been. The phone buzzed again. Another message. At least be man enough to face me. I exhaled slowly. Then I hit block. For the first time in our marriage, I was the one cutting her off. When I finally got home, the house felt different. It wasn't just the silence, it was the absence. The absence of tension, of walking on eggshells, of bracing myself for whatever mood Stephanie was in that day. It was mine again. I went to the bedroom, pulled out a duffel bag, and started packing. Not because I was leaving, she was. The moment she walked through that door, I wanted it clear that her time here was over. I was halfway through when I heard tires screech into the driveway. A car door slammed. Then, the front door burst open. Cole. Stephanie's voice echoed through the house, raw with fury. Where the hell are you? I took my time zipping up the bag before stepping into the hallway. She was standing in the living room, still in the clothes she had worn to the event, her hair a mess, her hands clenched into fists. Her eyes were red, not from crying, but from rage. You blocked me? She snapped. Are you serious? I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. Seemed easier than dealing with whatever this is. Her nostrils flared. You humiliated me in front of thousands of people. Do you have any idea what that was like for me? I let out a slow breath, shaking my head. Stephanie, do you have any idea what it was like for me to watch you walk into that garage? To stand there, knowing exactly what was happening, while you threw away our marriage like it meant nothing. She opened her mouth, but I wasn't done. You think I did this to you? I said, voice rising. No, Stephanie. You did this. When you flirted with him right in front of me. When you snuck off like I wouldn't notice. When you looked me in the eye and lied. She swallowed hard, her face contorting like she wanted to argue but couldn't find the words. Then she switched tactics. Her shoulders dropped, and suddenly, the rage was gone. Her voice softened. Cole, can we just talk? Just us. No yelling. No crowds. We've been through too much to just end it like this. I laughed. I couldn't help it. Now you want to talk? I gestured around the empty room. Funny how you never cared about talking when you were with him. She took a step closer. I messed up. I know that. But what you did, that wasn't about justice. That was about revenge. I didn't deny it. Her voice wavered. So what now? You just throw everything away? Just like that? I met her gaze, steady and sure. No, Stephanie. You threw it away. I'm just finally accepting it. A long silence stretched between us. Then, she scoffed, shaking her head. You're pathetic. I smirked. That's funny. Because for the first time in a long time, I don't feel pathetic at all. Her jaw clenched. She looked at the duffel bag on the floor, realization dawning. You packed my stuff? Your things are in the guest room, I said simply. You can take them and go. Her face twisted with fury again. You don't get to decide that, Cole. I stepped forward, standing inches from her now. Yes, I do. Because this house is mine. The life you had here is over. And you can stand here and throw whatever insults you want. but it won't change the fact that you lost. Stephanie's breathing was shaky, uneven. You'll regret this. I exhaled. No, I won't. She stared at me for a long moment, then let out a bitter laugh. Fine. She turned on her heel, stomping toward the guest room. I heard drawers slamming, the sharp sound of zippers, her muttered curses. A few minutes later, she stormed past me, yanking the front door open. She hesitated, looking back one last time, waiting, hoping, that I'd stop her. I didn't. And then, she was gone. I stood there, staring at the empty doorway, listening to the sound of her car peeling out of the driveway. And for the first time in years, I felt at peace. Stephanie didn't go quietly. I knew she wouldn't. She wasn't the type to admit defeat, to accept consequences, to take responsibility for what she had done. No, Stephanie was a fighter. Not in the noble, admirable way. In the vindictive, clawing, refuse to lose even when she's wrong kind of way. It took exactly 2 days for the first shot to be fired. I was in the middle of sorting out my bank accounts, shifting things into my name alone, when I got a call from my lawyer, Sam. She's contesting the divorce, he said bluntly, and she's coming for everything. I leaned back in my chair, rubbing a hand down my face. Of course she is. What's she saying? Sam sighed. She's claiming emotional distress. That you publicly humiliated her in an act of revenge. She's also trying to argue that you were financially dependent on her, and that she should be entitled to compensation for supporting you throughout the marriage. I laughed. A sharp, bitter sound. She cheated on me, but I'm the one who caused distress? That's how this game works, Sam said. She's hoping to paint you as unstable, resentful, vindictive. She's playing the long game, making you look like the guy who lashed out in a jealous rage instead of the guy who just finally had enough. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. So what do? We fight back, he said simply. You have proof, the text messages, the security footage, even witnesses. If she wants to play dirty, we'll make it clear that she's the one who detonated this marriage, not you. I nodded slowly. All right, let's do it. The first meeting with the attorneys was held in a neutral office downtown. A sleek, soulless conference room with glass walls and uncomfortable chairs. Stephanie was already seated when I walked in, her posture rigid, her expression carefully controlled. She had always been good at that, masking her emotions, presenting herself as untouchable. But I saw the tension in her shoulders, the way her fingers curled slightly against the table. She was nervous. Her lawyer, a stiff-looking man in a tailored suit, nodded as I took my seat across from her. Shall we begin? Sam leaned forward, setting a folder on the table. Let's start with the basics. Cole is filing on the grounds of adultery, which, as you know, can impact asset division. Stephanie's jaw tightened. That video didn't prove anything. Sam didn't even blink. The security footage, the text messages, and the GPS records all say otherwise. Not to mention the multiple people who saw you leave with the other party in question. If we take this to court, all of this will become public record. Stephanie's lawyer shifted uncomfortably. We would argue that the footage is inconclusive. It won't matter, Sam cut in, because the texts do the rest. Still thinking about earlier. Wish we had more time. Me too. But he's here. Later? That's not exactly the conversation of two innocent colleagues. Stephanie swallowed hard, her mask slipping for just a second. Then she let out a sharp breath, regaining control. This is ridiculous, she muttered. This whole thing is turning into a circus. Sam shrugged, then signed the papers, and it ends today. She shot me a glare, her voice dripping with resentment. You really think I'm just going to roll over and let you walk away from this unscathed? I met her gaze, unflinching. No, Stephanie. I think you already lost. You're just the last one to realize it. Silence stretched between us. Then, after what felt like an eternity, she grabbed the pen, her fingers shaking slightly as she signed her name. She shoved the papers toward her lawyer, crossing her arms tightly. Fine, she spat. But don't think for a second that you won. I exhaled slowly, leaning back in my chair. I don't need to win. I just need to be done with you. She stood abruptly, grabbing her bag, her movements stiff with rage. Without another word, she stormed out of the conference room, slamming the door behind her. Sam let out a low whistle, flipping the file closed. Well, that was dramatic. I let out a slow breath, running a hand through my hair. Yeah, but at least it's over. He nodded. You got what you wanted. No alimony, no dragged-out trial, and she sure as hell won't be walking away with any sympathy points. I stood up, feeling lighter than I had in years. Good. Sam smirked. So what now? I thought about it for a second. Then I smiled. Now, I start over. I walked out of that building feeling free. No more biting my tongue. No more making myself small so she could feel bigger. No more being the punchline to her jokes, the afterthought in my own marriage. I was done. I had spent too long believing that love meant enduring. That if I was patient enough, strong enough, forgiving enough, she'd eventually respect me. But now I knew the truth. Respect isn't something you wait for. It's something you demand. And I was finally ready to start demanding it. From the world, from myself, from whatever came next. The first morning after the divorce was finalized, I woke up to silence. No tension humming through the air. No passive-aggressive sighs from the other side of the bed. No sharp comments about how I wasn't pulling my weight while she scrolled through her phone, making weekend plans that never included me. Just peace. I had spent the last few weeks moving into my new place, a small but modern apartment on the edge of town, far enough from the memories of my old life, but close enough to still feel grounded. The walls weren't covered in framed vacation photos that meant nothing now. The drawers weren't filled with someone else's clutter. Everything here was mine. I stepped onto the balcony with my coffee, looking out over the city. The air felt different, lighter. Like for the first time in years, I could finally breathe. I had wasted too much time on someone who never saw my worth. I wasn't wasting another second. The first order of business was getting back to my life. Not the version of it I had built around Stephanie mine. I went back to the gym, something I hadn't prioritized in years. At first, it was just a distraction, a way to clear my head, to burn off the anger. But after a few weeks, I started noticing the changes, not just in the mirror, but in my mindset. I wasn't the guy she had broken down anymore. Work was next. I had let my career take a back seat while trying to be the supportive husband to someone who never supported me. Not anymore. I took on extra projects, made connections I had neglected, pushed myself in ways I hadn't in years. And it paid off. A few months after the divorce, I was sitting across from my boss when he slid an envelope across the desk. You've been killing it lately, Cole. We want to move you up to senior strategist. Bigger clients, better pay. You in? I picked up the envelope, feeling the weight of recognition. The old me, the one who had spent years being told I wasn't enough, would have hesitated, second-guessed if I even deserved it. But that version of me was gone. I smiled. Yeah, I'm in. Meanwhile, Stephanie was unraveling. I didn't go looking for updates on her life, but word traveled. She had underestimated how badly the scandal at Talladega would follow her. People in her social circles talked. She wasn't the victim in their eyes. She was the punchline. The mechanic? Travis. He didn't stick around. That kind of thrill doesn't last when the consequences start piling up. He ghosted her a month after the divorce, moving on to some other woman dumb enough to fall for his charm. Without me as her stability, Stephanie struggled. She had spent years acting like she was too good for me, too good for our life. But now, she was the one left behind. I ran into one of our old mutual friends at a bar one night. He smirked when he saw me, shaking his head. Man, I gotta hand it to you. You really did a number on her. I raised an eyebrow. How so? He leaned in, lowering his voice. She's been a mess. Can't keep a date. Keeps complaining about how people look at her differently now. She even tried to get into a serious thing with some guy. But the moment he found out what happened at Talladega, he dipped. I took a sip of my drink, letting that sink in. Stephanie had always assumed she could walk away unscathed, that she could do whatever she wanted without consequence. But actions have weight, and hers had finally come crashing down. I wasn't the one suffering anymore. She was. And the best part? I didn't have to do anything. One night, months after everything, I got a text from an unknown number. Hey, can we talk? I stared at it for a long time. I didn't need to guess who it was. For a second, I thought about answering, about hearing what she had to say. Maybe she wanted closure. Maybe she wanted to rewrite history. But then I realized something. I didn't care. Whatever she had to say, it didn't matter anymore. I deleted the message, blocked the number, and then I smiled. I had spent years being made to feel like I wasn't enough. But now, I knew better. Stephanie had been the weight dragging me down, and without her, I was finally free to rise.